go. Give me 1 second as I go to gallery view. Otherwise, it's like seeing myself in 3 different places. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Hold it. Let me see, what do I have? They're asking me to do it a second time. And then I don't know why it took me off of gallery view. Okay, good enough. All right, we'll begin. Join your palms and bow. The 4 great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Okay, good evening to you all. Today I wanted to continue on with examination of the individual elements that should be present when you're doing meditation. And the one that we're going to talk about today is awareness, which is a little bit of a difficult to try to prepare and say, how do we discuss awareness? So I figured, well, we'll start and go that we first should listen. When we listen, it is not the sound that is awareness or consciousness. That is information that's received. When we listen via the 5 skandha, we listen from the idea of subject and object. But when we listen with awareness, it is not the object that is important. It is the awareness that should be present all of the time. We no longer weight our mind attention toward any kind of a any kind of a reception of a phenomena, reception of anything that we hear. And we'll talk about it from the sense of hearing right now, as I don't want to confuse you at this point. So in our awareness of listening, the listening is always there, whether or not there is anything to hear. It's always there. It hears, and if it hears something, there may be other sounds as well that are also manifesting. The mind is capable of listening to them all in a state of equanimity or equipoise. And in this state, it only gives attention to that which needs to be paid attention to. So for instance, if a fire bell would go off, or a fire detector, I don't know if you've ever had that, or smoke detector goes off, obviously that's something that you want to pay attention to. But it doesn't have to be so strong of a sound. It could be any kind of a sound that we need to feel or sense, but it doesn't negate the reception of other information that's around us. This is an awareness that we have. The awareness is different from the perception of consciousness in the sense that in the consciousness of the 5 skandha, it is a subject and object, and there is something that is perceiving that object and putting the mind's attention to that object, to the exclusion of all other objects, of possible objects of perception. It is kind of a one-trick pony, and then if something else happens, it has to switch itself over to another. It's kind of like a bull in a bull ring with many toreadors around it. If one waves their cape, it looks towards that one. And then if one comes this way, it looks towards that one. But it keeps going like this. That this is the kind of perception that we use. It's not very economical, and it's not very highly functional. But nevertheless, we got used to using it. And why? Why? Because the illusory self interjects itself into the equation and says, I want to know what's going on. I need to know. I need to process, is this good or is this bad? Is this person mean to do me harm? Is this one doing this? What is going on? And then it gets lost in the confusion of the idea of the self, and it no longer can see the things as they are, as much as the confusion of this appearing and this appearing, or whatever it is. And so it is not very useful in the present moment. But this is the type of perception that human sentient beings generally use. We want to know what is there before the sound, before the sight, before the words. Even if there's nothing that's being said, there is still the sense of awareness. We use the senses in order to contemplate what's appearing in the human realm, but we do not use it for the sake of establishing an individual life and being. And that is where we have a problem, because the mechanism that we use to navigate in the human realm is faulty, because it has to run through the self in order to process and decide what it wants to do. And we're going to get into that in a moment in terms of the idea of consciousness. But when we look at this and we say, okay, consciousness, whose consciousness is this? And is consciousness a thing? Is it a thing? What is consciousness? Even before we get to awareness, we have to talk about consciousness. Take the time while I'm talking to try to contemplate consciousness. What is it? If I ask you right now, hey, you guys, what is consciousness? What are you going to say? Anybody want to venture forward and answer what consciousness is? I'll even give you a little bonus. If you're capable of doing it, look it up. Google consciousness. See what consciousness, what Merriam-Webster says about consciousness, what the all-important Wikipedia says about consciousness. Okay, look at all these things. Try to find out, what is consciousness. You know what you're going to find? So many different opinions as to what consciousness is. Like, you ask Michael what consciousness, and he's going to give you some gobbledygook of quantum mechanics on the whole thing, you know, which is probably going to be closer than if you asked someone else about consciousness. You know, heaven forbid you ask a politician what is consciousness, much less conscience. But in any case, it's interesting because we have to say, what is this consciousness? And yesterday, and I was preparing, and I was looking it up, and I was having a big laugh because I was going, nobody knows. Everybody talks about it. I mean, people can talk, philosophers can talk about consciousness, and you know, all sorts of different people. Ecclesiastics can talk about consciousness. No, different people, when they try to pin it down, some of them even say consciousness is awareness. Actually, consciousness is within awareness, but they use awareness and say you're conscious. Conscious what? Who is conscious? We can't even talk about consciousness until we say, who is conscious? Whose consciousness is there? you see, it's very, very interesting because it just drives you right directly into the heart of Chan when you ask those questions, because nobody wants to address those issues. There are some, let me see, I I downloaded this, which is talking about consciousness. And this is probably one of the better articles on consciousness. I say better because they can talk about it for never ending. Okay. I think at some point they must have run out of electricity or whatever, and then decided to finish. But this is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And it's very interesting because they go beyond our regular consciousness. And let me see if I can find it. And they get into, and then they say problems with consciousness. And there's a lot of problems with consciousness. You know, we will take that as a given. But then they talk about the states of consciousness, which is kind of an interesting thing, because when we talk about the states of consciousness, a lot of times what is an error, and whether we're talking about the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's version or Vijnana, the Buddhist version of consciousness, there's a lot of confusion as to calling things mental states, and then taking that and saying that consciousness is mind. Is Harry here? Oh yeah, there he is. Harry sent me something very interesting a few weeks back, a couple of weeks back, on someone that was talking about consciousness, somebody that I won't name them, but they started off in transcendental meditation. I think he got the boot from transcendental meditation, reinvented himself as a new agey philosopher, and then went on to actually begin to wax poetic about Buddhism, he knew nothing about. I mean, really, I mean, whatever you read, but I mean, not the heart of it. And then was starting to talk about consciousness. And so this person was talking about consciousness and turning it into mind. He has no clue. And it was the thing where Harry reminded me of sages return consciousness to mind, fools return or turn mind into consciousness. And it was very apropos when you read it, because it sounded so good and so great. And especially because the person has an Indian accent that makes him sound so wise. For some reason, people with an Indian accent sound so wise, like people with an English accent from England sound like very astute in their ways too. It just adds like a couple of intelligence points, at least what it appears, but it's just a false impression. And so was the article, because the person didn't have a clue about what he was talking about. I actually, Harry, later on, I ran into a thing where there was a quantum physicist that was challenging him about that, and he then proceeded to prove that he didn't have a clue of what he was talking about, but he just sounded good. I mean, I guess that's part of the thing. I don't want to sound good. I want you to get something that makes sense. But when we talk about consciousness, it's not that easy to talk about it. But in this article, in the Stanford one, I'm trying to find the part. I didn't have a chance to like fully read it page by page, but I did discover some things. And they were talking about a consciousness beyond our physical consciousness, and this kind of an extrasensory consciousness, which is kind of along the lines of Yogacara school, where they realized that there was something else there, that beyond just seven consciousness, there had to be something that operated above that. Some people would say it's a ninth consciousness, but it's actually the eighth consciousness, if we perceive, or if we accept that the eighth consciousness is ultimately mind itself. and functions in this way. Sometimes they say, oh, it's an exalted level of ninth consciousness where everything is perfected. But we don't go there because we understand that everything is already in order. We just don't see that it's in order. And so that's the difference with it. But we have to think outside the box, and in this case, this box here, we have to think outside of that and say there's something beyond that. Simply saying that I think does not establish very much, because you can chop that down by saying, where did that come from? Where is this projected on? This is something that's very important. We see the images, we claim the images for ourselves, but we have no idea what it's projected on. What is that? As I had mentioned before, some religions will bring forth the idea that this was something that we're created. And if that's the case, then clearly, if we were created by a supreme being, then all of what we're seeing of consciousness is just a dream. Sounds familiar. Except then when we apply it to the deity that created us, then who created the deity? It's just a dream. But see, the reason that I study Buddhism is because it doesn't 100% make sense, but it makes so much more sense than all the other philosophical and religious systems that are out there. The more I practice it, the more I'm clear about it, and the pieces are fitting more and more. In the beginning, it didn't make as much sense as it does now, and it'll make more sense in the future as I continue to practice. But at least there's something there that I can look at and begin to work on, because this idea of consciousness is really important. I strongly welcome you to try to pursue this in your own time and contemplate what consciousness is, because you're going to be chasing your own tail as you're doing it, but that's okay, because all of a sudden you realize you're chasing your own tail, but it's okay in terms of that. So when we look at it and we say, is consciousness a thing? Is it something? We already say that there's not a life in being, but so then what is this consciousness? Is it, does consciousness belong to someone, or someone belong to consciousness? And so we start again. Okay, wipe the sheet off and we'll start again. You ready? What is consciousness? We still have not resolved that issue. What is consciousness? Does it think? Is it aware? Or is awareness aware of consciousness? We have to process this. We have to be clear about it. If consciousness is aware of incoming sensations, mental formations, desires, aversions, is that consciousness come from where? What is this awareness? We sense occurrences in the environment. We can hear something. I can hear the air conditioner on right now. I can sense the coolness of it. But these are the gross environment, things that are there that we know, gross environment, the lights on, the computer screen's on, we're sitting down. All of those are gross sensations. But our practice is to explore into the subtleties where the profound wisdom could be found and processed. So when we look at it and say, then where does the memories, likes and dislikes and emotions come from? Where do all those come from? Are they simply just processed in our brain? And we say, there it is. It's processed in the brain. Everything we have, it's in there. Is it really? Can you say that for a certainty that there's nothing? Then that would mean that, yeah, you are a person, but how do you explain karmic forces? How does that work? So we'd have to discount and say everything is then just simply happenstance. It happens to people. There's no rhyme or reason to it. But that doesn't really make sense in terms of how you see things. Well, I already talked about looking up the definition and finding out it's very, very difficult to look at. But before we get to awareness, we really have to kind of explore this consciousness thing. And the Buddhists look at this from a different manner. We talked about just a single mind or ekayana. And in ekayana, it is not mental states. And this is very, very important. So I wanted to make a clarification that ekayana is not what we call citas, C-I-T-T-A. Those are individual mental states or mental formations within mind, but they aren't per se mind as much as formations that arise phenomenally. So they cannot be mind itself. So the idea of ekayana or a single mind simply means that we get to the point of thusness, and in thusness, then we can refer to it as mind or no mind, or as was referred to as tathagata or tathagata, which is thus come one or thus go one, but they mean the same thing. It is the totality of everything without there being a totality, because in a totality, there is nothing that can be separated from anything else. This is why everything is empty, including the consciousness, because the consciousness is arising phenomenally. There is no life and being there that can claim that it is, because the life and being is phenomenal. And that's important for us to understand. That's the part we don't know. We can't figure that out because we're working and we're processing on this. And it's very interesting. Yesterday, somebody was helping me edit something for a preface on a book that's going to come out. And in the end, I said that, may we all join together to practice, and that mind can awaken. And the person was wanting to put be in there and other things, and saying, well, that doesn't make sense. What do you mean mind awaken? If everything's mind, isn't mind awakened? Yeah, it's awakened. So the mind awakens to the fact that the sentient being, so-called sentient being, that's pursuing this truth is illusory. But it's not like, okay, you went to the Olympics and you didn't get any medal. You are the Olympics. I mean, so you've got it all. And that's why, is because when we get that point, there's no you to claim mind. It is just the understanding that mind is mind, the thusness of it. And I always go back to remembering, talking to Shifu and then pointing my finger at him and saying, Shifu, right now, you tell me, who is reciting the Buddha's name? Right now, tell me. Bring this person forward. I want to see them. And he understood what I was saying, that at that point, there's no longer the idea that there's a Gilbert that needs to become enlightened or anything. It is seen very clearly through that who indeed, where is he going to pin this on? You know, if he's going to have a robe and a hat and everything, there's no place to put it. Because that's phenomenal. Gilbert's phenomenal, but mind is still there. And that's why earlier in or last week, I was talking to Christoph, and Christoph was saying everything was all impermanent. But I said to him, Christoph, with a question mark. And it took him a couple of days to try to come back because he knew it was a trap. But that Christoph that I was speaking to or addressing was not other than mind itself. Now, Christoph wouldn't know that, but mind knows that. Christoph just didn't know how to respond to it because he knew it was a trap. What do I say? Do I say yes or no, or do I ignore it? Can I ignore that? You see, so he's stuck in an illusory trap. It is a way that I try to show you, demonstrate to you the proper way to analyze this. Now, when we look at this, the Palis talked about certain jhanas of 6 of the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. And then Yogacara took it a little further into the 8th consciousness. So it wasn't enough just to have mind where things were being processed here. They realized there was a formations of information that was the 6th consciousness, where it was putting everything all together. And the 7th consciousness was processing it. But they then had to add an 8th consciousness over that, because it could, if they stopped at the 7th consciousness, it would be presumed that this was an individual life and being, but it had to be processing, and it had to be governed by karmic forces as well. So all these appearances are governed by these karmic forces, and it interacts with the 8th consciousness, which rains down what we call bija. Bijas is seeds of information, seeds of occurrences, seeds of different things that can happen, that the potentiality of it now is maturing and interacts with the environment. Is that consciousness? No, it's like beyond consciousness. But this is how things are functioning. Now, the thing is that once when we practice Chan, and as we practice Chan, what happens is that we then begin to look into the idea of a life and being. And we begin to practice where we no longer are involved in an internal discussion or a continuity of the self. All of the 5 consciousness of the senses and the 6 consciousness of consciousness and putting things together are seen as unreal. As they're seen as unreal, then the 7th consciousness, which has to be supported by those consciousness, and those are now gone, it loses its foundation, and poof. In that moment, then, it is no longer seen as a life and being. It's no longer seen as this lasting permanent reality, but it's seen as it is. It's just a conjuring, an imagination. And so that's why they say in the Heart Sutra, far beyond confusions and imaginings, that's where the bodhisattvas function, because they're no longer confused as to what is appearing. And in that is awareness. So the awareness is not just a simple awareness. In the beginning, it is because we're practicing, we have training wheels on. But as it gets going, that awareness is not other than mind itself. And we'll kind of go through a few progressions so you can see that. So if we try all of these attempts to describe what mind is, what consciousness is, we're still stuck in the phenomenal side. But what is more important is to be aware in the present moment of what is happening. And there's one other thing that we need, that needs to be there too. So let's see if anybody can figure it out. So in the present moment, we should be aware of what is happening. What is the other thing that awareness should be? Anybody?
The secret time about it, causes and conditions.
So how would you say that? I'll give you partial credit up to this point. Go ahead.
But secret time, I don't know. I don't know.
Samapada. But
Thank you.
How do you see that applying? Don't give up. You're there. No, it's okay. I'm surprised that somebody got there, because it's not just what is happening, but why it's happening. That's wisdom. That's insight. When we are living our lives and we're not using awareness, we're just simply using this consciousness, we have no clue of what's happening in the present moment, much less why it's happening. But how is that beneficial to us? It's beneficial to us in a very deep way, because we are aware that whatever's present in the environment in this moment, we understand whether we should give it attention or no attention, whether it's something, how to deal with it, how to respond to it. And we also know why it's happening. So you're seeing me talking to you, so you should be aware of that. And you should be aware of why I'm talking to you, because you want me to talk to you. You want to know more. You have a great interest in this. And it is something that makes sense to you. So you want to know more. Of course, you're going to listen. That's what's happening. If you're somewhere else and somebody's talking about something that has of no use, and you continue to sit there to listen to them, why would you do that if unless it's something that somebody invited to you and you're pretty much stuck there? But I mean, you have to see clearly what is happening, and you see clearly for what is happening in order to do what? Anybody? Come on, this is not rocket science. What do we, what is
contemplate?
Contemplate? Well, hopefully we'd be contemplating, but after we contemplate, what?
Gaining wisdom.
Wisdom?
Awaken.
Awaken. Now you're getting way out there. Yes, at some point I would hope that, but what to do next in the present moment, right?
Aware.
Don't get too far ahead. Oh, you're aware of what you should do in next. Now, to be aware of what you should do next would mean that you should have a bit of a command of not just the present moment, but the potentialities of body, speech, and mind in the present moment, what they'll produce in the future. So in order to do that, you not only have to be aware of the present, but you also have to be aware of the past, what has happened before. What are the habitual tendencies of a collective group of people? What are the habitual tendencies of somebody that's around? unfortunately, sometimes people use that to manipulate people. And so I'm, they use it shamelessly. And stay tuned at the end of this show, because I want you guys to donate to me going into space. I've got $1, but I need probably a few more million. That's manipulation, where somebody's doing that and going, oh, well, yeah, of course, yeah. The last thing that you do. I mean, there are some people here I probably would give money to, but very few. And under certain conditions, I'll refuse to talk more about that. But in any case, so we need to know what's going to happen in the after whatever we think, say, or do. That's very, very important. So we have an awareness of things. Now, hold on, this gets me to our, and I apologize because these are not going to look too well, but the normal way that we look at things, hold on a second, let me go back here, I can see. Okay. Got to think reverse. The normal way we look at things is that, let's say we are looking, and this reflects the eye, and we're looking at an object right here. And so that solid line is our attention. And the little dotted lines are the potentiality of our awareness as we're looking at things. The squiggly lines on the sides here is all of these are just dead areas. There's nothing happening here. We don't see anything in the red lined area. Our perception is primarily subject and object. And so we believe that the eye is seeing something over here. Sorry, I'll learn how to do this in reverse as we go along, and seeing it. And our awareness is towards the front. And that's the sum total of our awareness. Now, if we get angry at someone, then the perception of anger is different. The perception of anger is, as we see here, the eye, and our object of anger is over here. There's just a solid red line of awareness, and the awareness is it's clouded, and it's just directed towards whoever we are angry at, or it could be our car that has a flat tire, or whatever the causes and conditions. But as you see the squiggly lines all over the place, they reflect that there's no awareness at all. So people who are always angry, or they're always trying to do things, their awareness is not very strong. They're not clear about things. And so we definitely don't want to have any kind of an emotion which will cloud us in this way. Okay, we don't want that at all. And so when we meditate, now this is conventional meditation. And in conventional meditation, what we have, let me pull it back. We have the eye looking forward, and you see I have kind of a wavy line coming like this towards the method. The M stands for the method. If I did it this way, it might be clearer, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to do it this way. And I apologize for all the jiggly. But what we have is again, the broken line showing the potentiality of awareness to the sides. But when we do conventional meditation, we keep our mind on the method, and we're using this, but all of these other broken lines is your scattered thoughts that are arising. So the scattered thoughts come in, and this wavy line, it reflects the mind's inability to maintain the method. It's being moved this way and that way, depending on whatever's arising in the mind. And the mind really has no control over what's appearing. If something comes up that's very scattered thought, it will pull this attention away from the method. So in doing that, then it doesn't work well. And that's why we have a very interrupted type of a practice, because it's trying to follow to the method, but it's being pulled to the sides by all these scattered thoughts. And again, our perception is only towards, let's say, the front of the mind, like towards in front of us. And the attention, if our mind was there, then it would be like a perception like this. It wouldn't be all around us. It would just be towards the front and nothing else. When I'm saying the front, is the front of the consciousness of the mind, where we have the method in front of us somewhere. There we go. So we have the method in front of us, but we cannot see the method. We're being pulled to the sides by scattered thoughts, but our attention is just a very narrow amount. But even at that, we have all these scattered thoughts that keep pulling us away from the method that's there. We cannot see it. Now, the difference is when you're using mind work meditation, the method is there. We don't have to shoot a very strong ray of light towards the method. It is just a placeholder. It's something that we keep it there just for so that we don't lose track that we are meditating. But we give it very little attention, but we give it enough to hold it in place. And we use it continuously, but we don't use it to the exclusion of everything else around us. So when we see everything, then essentially, go back, sorry. I promise to get better at this once I get to know how to use the stuff. But when we have this, then essentially what we do is we have this red line that comes this way, and that's just an unbroken line holding on to the method. It's continuous. Now in sun illumination, we would not have this red line here. This would all be gone, okay? But you see the arrows around, and these represent the I, or the awareness, not so much the I like object, but the awareness of the mind. And so this awareness, when you're meditating, is completely surrounds you. So your awareness of behind you is the same as looking forward. So whatever is over here, you're aware of it as much as you're aware of any one of these. And again, the arrows represent the ultimate expansion of this awareness to the infinite. So there's no border to that awareness. It goes on. Now, when we initially practice, we're just going to have an awareness around here, and there's probably more awareness this way than anything. But what we want to do is begin to practice so our awareness is all around us in all directions. And when we do that, then it works right. Then we get to another part. This one, Gilbert goes 3D, okay? So in this picture, what we have is the black circle, just imagining the one that we were seeing a moment ago and tilted a little bit so that you can see the different planes. Now that there's this awareness, hold on a second. So we have this awareness here and that's the plane of what we see, okay, what we're aware of. Now, the blue line is very interesting because the blue line represents what has gone before. And so we also can maintain an awareness of what has gone before us. Although our emphasis is on the present, but it is the present mind aware of what has gone before. And then the red line, it represents the potentiality of what can happen. So this is how we see awareness. It's not in a two-dimensional way or three-dimensional, it's four-dimensional, actually more than that, because it's the past. We have the past and the present, and the future, and this presents the potentiality of what's going on based on what has gone on before, what is happening in the present moment. This then constitutes this Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, this perfected wisdom of being able to see things exactly as they are, exactly as what might be coming up in the future based on whatever we're doing, given the fact of what has gone on before. So we're mindful of what has gone on before and what we're going to do. And so in this way, we know how to behave, what to say, what to do, or what to think. And so we're mindful of that, because if we think in the wrong way, then we will know that in the future something will happen here that may not be a wholesome. But when we maintain this mind awareness in this way, so once we have this mind awareness like this, then we're operating off of wisdom. And this wisdom then enables us to make correct decisions in the present moment. Because where do we find the present moment in all of this? We don't really find it. We're just functioning within mind. And so we're functioning in samsara, but understanding samsara is in here. And this is the whole, the thusness of everything. And this is how it works. Like someone was saying, pratika samapada, then this is pratika samapada applied. This is the wisdom to know how things should be going, how they function. And so it's an interesting way, because this is the awareness that you should be sitting in when you're meditating. But there's no cogitation, there's no thinking involved in this. This is the part that becomes difficult, because when we see it in that way, there's no thinking, there's no doing, there's no being there. There's just simply mind looking at mind, and then functioning perfectly in accordance with pratika samapada and in accordance with karuna. And it is the karuna that enables us to understand deeper why we want to share this with other people. So it's not something that we do just simply, for our escape or for our entertainment or whatever. It is something that enables us to break through the idea of a subject and object, or a world that is based on duality. In the manner in which I'm showing you in this one here, this is you could say there's no duality. There's no object and no subject. It is just the totality of how things work. And in this way, it makes things a lot easier. It'll take you a little bit to try to sort through all of that, but I think you're capable of doing it. And in doing so, you're going to be able to hang on a second. Sorry. Suffering from a scratchy throat today. Be able to practice well. So when you're sitting and you're meditating, you bring up the method, and if it's illumination, you're just aware of everything, and you stay there continuously. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, but just let the mind take a rest. It's resting in the present moment. Its only function is to meditate. The body's gone, like we talked about last week. The mind is relaxed. It's aware in this moment. It's aware of all directions. And if you become adept at this, your mind will automatically continue with this awareness when you get up. So when you're walking anywhere, communicating with people, whatever, you're like in a gyroscope. What do they call that? A gimbal, where everything kind of spins around, but you're still, the awareness in the present moment is your center point, and whatever's happening, it finds its balance, moving through. The only thing is that this here is way out here, and so everything is within this awareness, and the mind is no longer stuck with the body. The awareness has expanded, and so this individual sentient being, its priorities, of course, it needs water, and it needs food, it needs clothing, it needs shelter, all of those things. And it also has an interest in delivering other people. So it is all revolving in there. And that's why I'm trying to give you something as a sense of how awareness is that it is so fantastic. It's all around you. Even I'm here and in my room, and I'm aware of where I'm at. I'm aware of where I'm sitting. I'm aware I'm sitting in this room here is above my garage. And if I look out the window, there's a canyon there. I'm aware of all of that. I'm aware, but yet it doesn't interfere with what I'm doing. It's just that the mind is capable of expanding this awareness to an incredible extent, and it's infinite. And that's why in this one here, hold on a second. That's why I put the arrows going out. This is like how you should meditate with mind work. The arrows go in all directions. There's not a border to it. You should not make a border to your awareness simply because walls stop you. Those walls are illusory. Your awareness can expand out. Sometimes, due to causes and conditions, the mind is capable of having awareness that's beyond the capability of your senses. Sometimes it happens. It doesn't mean that it happens all the time, that you're omniscient in terms of everything that's happening around you. But sometimes, because of causes and condition, one is capable of being aware of something here. Looking back at this, that happened in the past, or something that could happen in the future, or is presently happening somewhere, even if it's 2,000 miles away. It's capable of doing that just simply because the awareness is pushed out that far. Doesn't mean it can push out that far all the time, but we utilize this awareness, and we don't give it any borders, and then in that way it will work. So this is kind of an unusual class today, because I probably presented more questions than answers, but I wanted you to get a feel for this, and I want you to practice having this kind of an awareness. So tomorrow, when you're around people, if you're around people, be aware, be aware, and what is happening around you. See if you can't hear other conversations, or when somebody has come into the room, gone out of the room, something is going to happen. Somebody is, there's a potential to have an accident, or whatever. You're driving, or the cars are going to slow down, or whatever, and you just push your awareness out, and you'll find that it helps you be able to navigate through the environment and prevent accidents, disasters, mistakes in what you say or do. So it's something that is quite helpful to you. Today, Gilbert, kind of the ego comes up, and I have to govern it and pull it back. Otherwise, it would make a mess of the lecture. But sometimes it gets out ahead of you, and you have to pull it back. And so then you understand that that's through body, speech, and mind. But that's why they call us practitioners, is because we practice this, and we become aware of the significance of everything that we say, think, and do. If we're that way and we understand Pratika Samappada, then we will not be confused by any of this. We'll be able to understand it in a way in which it is something that is beneficial to us. So I'll leave you there, and then ask if you have any questions or comments. I'm open to questions or comments. This is kind of an interesting lecture. Mark.
I'm curious, as one experiences a greater sense of awareness, as you described, does that state remain, or can it ebb and flow?
Ebb and flow. It comes and goes. It's something that some days you're better at it than others. Some days, when there's so much emotion there, then that's when your mate or somebody will say, and I thought you were a Zen practitioner. You're not very good at it, are you? Which will go like, but it's all right. It's okay. And you just say, you resemble that remark, and, go on from there. So yes, it's that's why they call us practitioners, Mark. It takes time, but as it does it's very amazing how much awareness we miss. Right out of the box, we can improve, I would say, at least 50% of our awareness. But wait, there's more. You can get more. I'm sounding like an infomercial now. 2 for the price of 1 in your case. So in any case, that's kind of where we're at. But it does take practice. I mean, this is not something that you do and you go, oh, I'm going to be a Superman and I'm going to have this great awareness. No, it comes gradually. But with it, and it's the awareness, the part that when I say, wait, there's more, is the wisdom that comes with it. which is very, very amazing. And with that wisdom, it brings along compassion. So it's quite an important corner to turn in terms of our practice. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. And Paloma, did you have a birthday recently? Yeah, I can't hear you. Okay, happy birthday. Sorry, I didn't catch it earlier.
Thank you.
Okay. So somehow you keep, I guess you're getting a little bit older than I am, but that's only in my mind. You know, I've created that, but it's fine. You still look younger than me.
I'm never going to catch up with you, so.
Okay. Anybody
So-
else questions? I mean, you guys should have questions about this. This is not something that you read every day.
We have three questions: Luis, EK, and Paloma.
Say that again.
So there are three hands up. Paloma has
okay.
her hands up, but she came last. The first was Louis, and then EK.
Okay, let's do that then.
My question has to do with the method, and my method is Huatou. And in Huatou, it seems almost that expanding awareness and working on my method are like opposites. But when I'm relaxing, if I just relax and then awareness seems to be easy to be aware of more that's going on. But during my meditation with the Huatou, awareness doesn't seem to expand. It seems to contract.
If you're using the Huatou in a hard way, that's natural that you'll have that kind of an experience, okay? Because the Huatou works to the exclusion of everything. So it works kind of in the same way, but coming from a different direction, which is to exclude all sensory information. Whereas in this awareness, no sensory information is excluded. All of it is experience, but in a state of equanimity. In yours, the state of equanimity is simply, if you're using a hard Huatou, is the awareness of the method, and that's it. So, but when you get up, you can still use your awareness unless you want to use a soft Huatou. But with a soft Huatou, you can use awareness at that time. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Because you pointed out something that was important for me to remember in future lectures. Thank you very much. And then Kai, is that how you say your name?
Yun,
Say it again.
Yun Cai.
Ying Thai.
My first name is Yun. Sorry, I've
Yun.
only put a Y there, but it's Y-U-N.
Yun.
Well,
Okay, I'll remember
yeah,
that.
sort of. All right, so I have two questions. Item one is that when you said that tomorrow, go be aware, your environment. So really, I don't try to expand my awareness. I don't go try to aware more. Instead, I should really be inward. Then the mind sort of expands by itself.
It will naturally expand if you do that. And thank you for saying what you said, because I want to clarify. We don't try to push our awareness out. The awareness expands naturally. Okay. The only thing we want to do is let the awareness be present. Let it be present in all 10 directions. And even if the 10 directions only go up this far, let it be present. little by little, it will naturally expand. The way you're doing it is fine. You can get there, but it might take you a little longer than just allowing the awareness to be present. And the awareness is aware of everything. The reason that we want this awareness there is because that is where the illumination of the mind happens. We cannot have illumination of the mind without awareness. The awareness is there, and that's why I was saying that there's this. And as I was studying it, I created that last panel that shows there's also the awareness of the potentiality in the future based on what has gone on before. So the awareness is not something that is just simply in the present. It melds what was purportedly in the past to the future, and sees it and enables us through Anyatara Samyak Sambodhi to realize that it's all created by the mind, and that being that is created by the mind, we use this incredible wisdom, and it generates compassion for all sentient beings. So it's an interesting way in terms of how we look at it, but in any case, it is something that will work well for us. Okay. Next question.
So my second question is.
Okay.
Okay. So my second question is, when we, let's say in daily life, I open my eyes, through the lights and through my nerves behind my eyes, I see images, right? So when I illuminate, do I still see images? So I do have the experience that my mind sort of expands, not to that degree, but expands. So even with the expanded mind, I still feel I see images. And of course, I have the subject and the object. But eventually it will dissolve. But I mean, in the silent, when applying the silent and the illumination, when I aware, what do I aware?
You're aware that the mind is seeing images, even if they're imaginary images. You're aware that they're precisely there, precisely in accordance with pratika samappada, because conditions never fail. But as you become aware of that little by little, like you say, the strength of those images will dissipate, and you will no longer have those images or have the idea that you are seeing any images. You will just see waves of information passing through the mind in a very passive way. The mind is aware of it. Obviously, if there's something that it needs to be aware of in the immediate moment, it could be aware of it completely, because the mind is illuminated. But it doesn't mean that when we meditate that all of these images stop. Quite to the contrary, we see more of them. Why? Because we're aware of them. Before, we were never aware of them. So we just took them to be us thinking. But in actuality, what it is just habitual patterns that are arising. When we see things clearly like this, we're not confused as to what's arising in mind. We don't look at it and say, oh, I want to get rid of these images, or let me follow these images, or whatever. You just see them in a state of equanimity, meaning that they have no more value than the sound of your breath, or your sensations of your skin, or your bottom in contact with a cushion. There's no difference. So just see it in this way, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Great questions. Okay, Paloma, you're next up.
So when you showed us that drawing of the donut, that was the present awareness and awareness expanding to the past, my immediate reaction was to think, that's not awareness, that is common sense. If I am driving drunk and I have had 6 tickets already for driving drunk. I can foresee another one coming pretty soon. If I am driving drunk right now, it's common sense. It's not awareness. That's what I'm thinking. And then the other question is, who has the common sense? Who is thinking that way?
That's the question that you have to answer. That's the one you've been carrying around with you for years since I've known you. It's a good one. But your first comment reminds me of a joke, and forgive me, I'm going to say a joke. But this city slicker was traveling out in the outskirts of the town, and he was going by a farm, and he stopped to buy some corn, and he noticed that there was this bowl of pellets, you know, and they and so he asked the farmer what they were, and the farmer said, they're smart pills. And he goes, what do you mean they're smart pills? And he goes, they're smart pills. And he says, okay, well then give me like a bag. And he goes, how much is that? He goes, $10. And he goes, well, if they work, oh, they'll work all right. And so he pays him the money and puts his hand into the bag and gets a whole gob full of these pellets and puts them in his mouth, and then immediately spits them out and says, these aren't pills, these is rabbit poop. And the farmer said, you see, you're getting smarter already. So who is getting smarter, Paloma? Indeed, you're right. Nobody said that common sense and wisdom isn't part of mind. It's precisely part of mind. Everything is common and ordinary, and we see things in this way. So you just keep thinking in that way, and they'll manifest properly. You don't have to worry. You're not looking for any extra sensory experience to establish, you know, that you become enlightened. It is just in this present moment, and just do it in the way you're doing it, and it's fine. Don't worry about you know, the awareness. The awareness is way beyond common sense, though. Awareness, it exceeds all of that. Common sense is within awareness. It is within mind, but mind is so much more expansive. Okay, you'll see. Okay, Angela.
Take your word for it.
Yeah, hello. Amitabha.
Amitabha.
Thank you for your very enlightening class today. So my question is, the picture that you drew of the anger, like the big direct red line towards the anger, and then the last picture you drew of the I guess you call it all pervasive awareness. Yeah. So my question is, how do you gel or overlay them together? In other words, I guess, how do you first, I guess, transform the anger to the last picture? And yeah, I mean, that's a relative question. And I guess the ultimate question is, in some sense, I guess they are both the same picture. Yeah. So if you could expound a little bit more on this, thank you.
Sure. Let's put them together. And when we put them together, essentially what happens is we see that the anger is there. But in actuality, this anger is illusory. To us, it looks real, but in actuality, it's just a puff of smoke. It's not real. Mind is real. The awareness of mind is real. All these things are happening within it. Even our awareness of all those images they happening within mind. We're clear about that where they're happening. So the anger, yes, the anger is happening with the mind, but because it's so powerful, it masks all of this. So all we see is this, but we cannot see this, which is the reality of things that that are there. This mind, and I should put little arrows going out in all directions because it's infinite. But all we see is this, and then we think that this is real, but it's not. But it nevertheless does appear in mind. It's not separate from mind, even though it's illusory. It's not separate. We understand that, and the more that we expand our awareness, and when I say expand our awareness, now we're going into the awareness being more than just sensory awareness, but the awareness of right view. And this is where I think Paloma, there's kind of a, you're seeing it as awareness, as sensory awareness versus this awareness by virtue of mind itself, this right view, which there's no locus to it. There's no place that it abides. It abides everywhere. So this is how you would explain that. So that red line going through is transient. It's something that's there. Mind is aware of it, but our illusory mind masks the reality that it is temporary, and it's an illusion itself. Okay, you just have to kind of play with that. Okay. All right, Wendy.
Okay, thank you, Gilbert. Can I ask one more question that just popped up?
$5.
5
All right.
illusory.
All right.
So the final picture that you drew, right, with the 4-spoke arm, so I guess
Yes.
ultimately we should erase that with a duster.
It need not be erased. It just is illusory, and it's given that way. And once one awakens to mind, there's nothing that we have to negate. We just see everything as naturally arising in accordance with Pratika Samapada. So it's okay, you know, whatever's there, even after one would awaken, one would still see these vestiges of obscurations in the mind because of habitual patterns. But the difference is one would know that these are not real. Okay. Okay, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's almost revolutionary for, I'm just thinking that last time you talked about relaxation, and now it's about the awareness. Just so it's totally like I'm trying to, maybe too hard to focus on the breath to when I meditate. It's I'm just thinking I'm trying to make sense. Maybe I'm doing it a bit too hard the way so just relax and aware, and I'm just trying to make sense because
and it's an interesting thing because you when you practice it, that's why I emphasized the relaxation last week, because and emphasizing the relaxation, then we know that we don't have to generate a forceful application of the method or be aggressive with it. It's actually just simply sitting. It's simply sitting and disentangling from all the stuff around us. And so the way we disentangle is not entangle ourselves more. So when we don't entangle ourselves, all of the entanglements will naturally fall off. in their own time, in their own intensity, and it will naturally happen. We don't have to forcefully do it or forcefully bring ourselves to, I mean, when it doesn't make sense, right? You forcefully try to bring yourself to a relaxed state of mind. So you bring the relaxation to the cushion via the inducement of relaxation. And then as you're sitting and applying it and you're using your awareness, then the natural relaxation of mind itself, which is not conjured, it's not something that is, that, all right, we relax, oh, I'm relaxed now. It's not in that way. It is the natural intrinsic self nature of mind that one is tapping into at that point. There is a handoff between the inducement of relaxation and relaxation of the mind. In between, we should not try to force this side. It won't work. We just let this come in, and then they kind of overlap. And then after a while, you realize all of it is just this relaxation. And then you use it in this way. So yeah, ratchet back your expectations and it will be better. You're there and you're really working on a lot of parts, which is good. And so I think at this point, when you do it, just come, if you begin to lose the method, then put a little bit more application onto it. But if the method is there, then you ratchet it back, just a little bit less, and it will work. So try that, and then we'll see next week. Let's see how you're doing. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Silan.
Hi, I just wonder if you can explain a little bit the connection between awareness and compassion. How does awareness lead to compassion? Thank you.
Very interesting, because in this awareness, you're talking about the awareness of Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, this highest wisdom. And in this highest wisdom, the mind sees things naturally, and it sees that there's a disturbance in mind. And it has an interest in sorting that out. It would be like, let's say if you were there and in your room, you might be one of those persons that sees the bed, and if there's like a little crease in the bed or an overlap, you'd want to go and straighten it out, right? It would be like, I don't want to see that. So the mind is in the same way. It feels these disturbances in its own force, and so as a result, I'm like Star Wars now. But it naturally will bring forth this interest, and it naturally brings forth the interest in a very interesting way, knowing full well that the illusory sentient beings are illusory, yet they create a suffering. And it's like mind walking with a rock in the shoe and going, well, that rock is there, but I can pull it out and I don't have to have it in there, and then it will work. It's very interesting. So there's this transition into this, let's say, higher understanding of awareness through wisdom. And it's that which has this interest, what we call karuna, the Karuna. So this is from the Abhidharma. And so this karuna is there, which is the interest in the suffering of others. And that naturally comes from the mind releasing all of its attachments to illusory creations. It doesn't mean that it doesn't see them. It doesn't understand them. It knows them. It sees them. It knows precisely what they're there because it put them there. It's very interesting. Mind created it, so it can uncreate it. So that's the interest of karuna, is uncreating this mind disease. And I always use that word in a way, mind disease, because it's a dis-ease in mind. We're not comfortable. When I say we, mind is not comfortable. Okay. So kind of play with that. All of that is just things for you to kind of like munch on and sort through. If you munch on it enough, you'll break through. Okay. You will. Okay. You're right there.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
So Mark had another comment.
Okay.
Hi, Gilbert, just wanted to come back to the topic of consciousness.
All
So,
right.
as you discuss the topic and reflect on it, how I would summarize it back is consciousness is manifest from the self, which is illusory and doesn't exist. It has no existence.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing because, but for the phenomenal side of consciousness, it would not necessarily be there. That doesn't mean that awareness would not be present. Awareness, as we refer to it as mind, would be present.
Right.
Okay. What's not even, we can't even call it present at that point, right? It's just the thusness of mind. But the consciousness is only there and a function of mind interacting with phenomena. And remember, mind interacting with phenomena doesn't mean that the mind is illuminated at that moment, but whatever's interacting with phenomena is not other than mind itself.
Right.
Think about that. That's why everything is created by the mind. Mind is interacting, but just like Shakyamuni Buddha related the 12 nidanas of dependent origination, that's how things come into being. When they came into being, who knows? But we have to understand that and understand that very person that asks the question, that person that has ignorance in them, whoever it is, whoever's created something, is not other than mind. We just are parading or masquerading as sentient beings. Okay, very interesting.
Thank you.
These are all clues for you to break through. One last one, or is that it?
There's Ruth who has
Okay.
the last question.
All right, because I'm about done with my throat and I'm about done with my teeth. Okay.
Tofu, thank you for, I missed last Monday, but I heard it on Wednesday about the relaxation. And I just wanted to comment and thank you for that, because my awareness, because of the relaxation technique, one of the things I don't relax is, like you said, something about the organs and the emotions and relaxing that as well. So I was able to kind of drop that. And this week have really realized how I really want things to be other than they are, like you said about the bed, and I want that to be different. And so as I've started to relax in my body and just allow things to be as they are, I've realized that my habitual tendencies is to want things to be other than they are. So I just wanted to thank you, because that's kind of is helping me to relax and be aware. Even like right now, I'm wondering who is it that gets very nervous and all that. So I'm just like, what is that? And maybe it's not nervous. I just want to change that to, I'm excited about what's happening. I'm excited about meditation, and there's something that's there or not there. I don't know. But thank you. That's all.
I will pass on my master's comments when I told him that. He said, "That's good, but Gilbert, don't get too excited." Okay, believe me, that's wisdom. It's very simple, and it's very funny, because I don't know how, when I was by myself with Shifu, he didn't need an interpreter, and he always understood what I was saying. I understood what he was saying, and I just think that it's just something very incredible, to pass on these these gems of wisdom to people. Yeah, don't get too excited with it. Just keep it stable, and it will work very, very well for you. You know, it's like, it's a good sign. Okay. And all of you kind of coming into this in your own ways, and I'm really happy about that. I mean, I'm giving you guys something that's a dipping pretty deep into the practice, and you're hanging in there with me. I mean, and that's amazing. You know, this is not something that you start and you give to beginners without giving them a dose of basic as well. There's nothing wrong with giving beginners something like this, but it has to be done in a little bit easier way of doing it. So I'm real happy you guys are hanging in there. You know, I'm seeing the faces here, and I'm seeing, you know, the people that had come in and had made improvements along the way. I mean, and you're looking, you know, senior students like Rick and Letty that are here now coming up. When I can call senior students like Michael and Eon, because they're there in Paloma. All these people that have been with me for a long time, and I have new people coming in and steady. Just stay with us. It will pay off. This is something that it's clear. You know, I have people like Esther who's been trying to decipher what I say and write. You know, and that's kind of an interesting thing too, because it takes quite a bit to do that. But if you really want to advance, then you know, try to do some of the transcription of things, because it's one thing to hear it, another thing is to write it down and be responsible that other people are going to read it, and you want to explain it to them. You know, sometimes it's very funny because people will do things. I remember Michael trying to explain things for the first time to some of his people, and they're all going like, what are you talking about? You know, it's not so easy. It seems like it, but it's not that easy, but it comes with skill. So I thank you very much. I'll come up with something for next week, you know, and we'll continue on with all of this. Thank you very much. Have a good week. Omitofo. Stay safe, please.
Thank you,
Vaccinate.
Gilbert.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Bye.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye,
Omitofo.
everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Gilbert.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you all for being around. Yeah.
Thank you, Gilbert. Good night.
Yeah. Good night. And then Michael, thank you for hosting.
Feel better.
All right. I'll try to. Take care now, all of you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'll be